aitäh kutsumast.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to continue after Harald and Regina, who have already explained why science is important in crisis management. And as a scientific counselor, my work is not to do crisis research, but it's to pass on knowledges to politicians from scientists so that they would be simple but not oversimplified, and that would help them to make the right decisions during crisis. For a couple of years, I've been working with a report to the European Commission to help them with the preparedness of the crisis. And this is a report with 25 recommendations. And with this work, I've realized that these recommendations in the report are not only good for the European Commission, but they are also useful for other member states who have similar issues and their local governments and also private person. After the report, I actually bought myself a diesel generator, and that was before the Prime Minister told us to buy one. So it's definitely changed my life. However, what to say about this report, or what's the main message? I would like to come back to the title, is how to cope with unexpected future crisis. And on several occasions we've seen a situation where we have a new crisis again, and then they ask, oh, how did this happen? How were we not prepared for this? For example, when we started to prepare our report, then this was 6 months before the war in the Ukraine, and we actually received guidelines not to observe military conflicts because they are not likely to happen anyway. And then 6 months later, we had to rewrite the report. So a crisis is when we are ready for a crisis, as someone said before, then it's not crisis. So it always has something unexpected. How could this now happen? And what does science say about this? Can we predict all crises? Can we predict dangers and then not be surprised afterwards? Probably not. And UN has a danger registry composed by Virginia Murray, which includes 4,000 different possible threats and the risk levels of what could possibly happen. It's interesting to see as a doomsday literature to read before going to bed at night. And most of these threats and risks are very unlikely, maybe 1 to 1,000. But if we look at the cumulative possibility that if you have 1,000 risks and each risk is 1 to 1,000, then the likelihood that one of these risks will come to life in a short time is actually quite high. It's 0.5 or something. So one thing that even science, I wouldn't say perhaps statistics, mathematics, but these small likelihood, large impact events, we never know which risk will happen, but we know some of those very small risks with small likelihood will actually come to life at some point, and we need to be ready for it. So how can we be ready for something that we are not aware of? Luckily, many risks and crises have common parts. They could be caused by different things, but we can also learn from the previous crisis. So even if the previous crisis was completely different, it has some common features with the next one. So if you think of a crisis like you haven't thought about, for example, if you we have a sunstorm, a solar storm in Estonia, who has thought about that? We have one person at least. But what happens? It's a very strong electromagnetic impulse, so electricity supply will be down. But if there's no electricity, then we know what to do. We're prepared for it. We have electricity generators and etc., etc. So the common part with the completely unknown risk is there. There are things that we're familiar with and what we need to do. How to have pop-up emergency tents or hospitals, field hospitals, transportation, logistics, communication, evacuation of large amounts of people, regardless of the risk. We need to do that anyway, so we can prepare for unknown risks, at least to a certain extent. And what science also says about crisis is that the panel has already discussed it, and some speakers have also highlighted this, that the risks are more frequent. And we also know that crises have a tendency to escalate compared to previous, and there are specific reasons for it. One of the reasons is that we are more connected in the world with more connections than before. Just the likelihood that a crisis would escalate quickly is also much greater. So the future crisis example or indicator is that they are cross-domain and they're cross-border compared to before. And this means that if crises are more cross-domain and cross-border, then the logical conclusion is that in order to manage crises and prepare for them, then that also needs to be cross-domain and cross-border from the very beginning.
Hästi palju, peaaegu kõik sellised.
Nearly all speakers have mentioned the importance of cross-sectoral cooperation, and it is true, we need it more than ever before. Cooperation is something that we sometimes come together and say we need, but then we all go back to our work and we don't actually do anything. But cooperation is about operation. It is about hard work. It's not easy to go and knock on somebody's door and say that, look, a crisis might come at any point, we need to do something together. It's easier to just stay on our own. Therefore, we must appreciate how important it is to take action and how difficult it is and how much effort is required, because there is so much more risk of escalation than there was some years ago. A PhD thesis was defended on cyber threats a few days ago at the University of Technology of Tallinn. Considering we are such a small country, Estonia is doing well in the context of cyber threats, and we are also very much prepared for cyber crisis. But what else did this PhD thesis demonstrate? It demonstrated that it's not enough if computers communicate between each other. People have to also communicate. It's not enough to have an e-state where computers are well connected. We need people to come together to exchange experience, to brainstorm, to share responsibility. You need human contact. The University of Technology focuses on technology, but the PhD candidate found that at the end of the day, what you need is people. After years of research, communication across institutions is difficult, and this is the case everywhere, not only in Estonia. Countries are based on hierarchies. There are responsibility sectors and different hierarchies of how and what should be managed. In case of a crisis, this hierarchy can cause a lot of time wasted, And sometimes, if there is no good monitoring, people can work against each other without even realizing it. So at the state level, we need to have more horizontal platforms where people in different authorities and institutions can communicate amongst themselves. And it's not only something we should do when a crisis strikes, but beforehand as well. You need to always be sure you know who to call when and if anything happens. Another very important aspect is international communication, apart from the communication between authorities. Small countries in specifically run out of capacity if there is a major crisis and they need international protection. But Estonia is not a small country. Estonia is a very small country. It's very likely that our capacity will run out at some point, and international help is important. I'm very glad that Hans Das mentioned the European Civil Protection Mechanism. The report shows that we have done things right. We have changed our models, carried out risk analyses, and done something better each time. And at the moment, at the European level, they are reacting fast enough to solve even urgent crisis. So how could Estonia use this mechanism better? First of all, we should be more aware of this. In Sweden, in 2014, there were major forest fires. Do you know what the data is crucial in order to understand the situation, to carry out modeling. Data collection is major work, and our own data is often not enough. We need international data to analyze. For that, we have data collections, we have services such as emergency management services, Copernicus. You can call them, you can ask for information. You don't just get satellite images, they will actually give you the specific number of cars that are blocked on a highway. This is a capacity that Estonia can build for itself, but quite often it can end up being too hectic. We don't have enough resources, it doesn't end up being sustainable. So I would say we would do better to tap into large data collections properly. And maritime safety services also are another source for information, for instance. When preparing for crises, the last conclusive idea is the following. I sometimes introduce our report at the European level, and the crisis management expert asked me. He said that for small countries there are very few recommendations. Make friends, make friends, make friends. This is the most important thing for us. Thank you, Urmas, and I have finished just on time. Thank you, Maarja. A round of applause. When you said that there should be a connecting platform, what is it that you would like to see here? Our daily concerns are at our focus, and unless there is an exercise situation, we don't think about what the communication platforms could be. What works in your opinion and from your experience? We've got hierarchical systems, and if we create some nodes where information always comes together, for instance, if you want a good example, the European Emergency Response Center presented by Hans Das is somewhere where information is put together and then distributed. It's within the European Commission, but it's not stuck somewhere between different authorities in a limbo somewhere. Something else that I can see is that at Vice Chancellor's level there should be equal platforms where information can be shared even in peacetime. You all know that getting ready for a crisis is much better than solving it. An averted crisis is the best crisis. Having worked on these topics, we've also heard about AI from the previous presentation. Where do you foresee that we could find help for crisis resolution in the near future, considering the changing times that we are living in? Indeed, Harald quite briefly mentioned how much modeling can help us. So, should we think of it as weather forecast, crisis forecast? Is that so? Absolutely. But we should also remember that it's not something we can do on our lap. We need massive amounts of data and computing capacity. And all of this data exists at European level. There are projects that allow making even a twin of the Earth and carry out different modeling. We need to know about these systems and participate in them as well. Going back to Mr. Das's presentation, climate change data is probably sufficient in order to start forecasting possible scenarios, as long as we are able to accept them. I think we're doing this better and better, and I think AI is more of a possibility than a threat when it comes to managing crises and forecasting them. A brief comment: the European civil protection mechanism is a network where Estonia has been a part of for many years, and Swedes also did know about this, but it was not yet prepared for such quick responses. But of course, maybe the phone number was not properly shared at that time. I am very glad that Estonians are present in these networks. Thank you.